Hey, Garth, got a question for you.
Hey, Jason.
When you first meet somebody, what's the first question you think to ask them?
How was your summer? No, I'm just joking.
Strangers, Garth, strangers. What would you ask?
Yeah, I think once you get beyond the niceties, like, hey, how you
Yeah,
doing? Like nice to meet you. Um, I used to fall into this, like, I guess it was these questions like, what do you do at work, or
yeah,
what line of work are you in? And so I've just taken a variation of that. Like
yeah,
wherever we are, like, say I meet a person at a baseball game or in the halls at school, say, hey, when you're not here, what do you love to do?
yeah. I love that. Love that.
Yeah.
I traveled
So I
around the
try
world
not
one
try.
time.
I'm trying to focus, like, not on the immediate, not
Yeah,
on like the things they have to do, but what do you love to do? What do you choose to do?
yeah, I love that. I traveled once around the world for 300 days, and I realized that North Americans, we ask, what do you do for work? But almost every other place in the world, they ask, tell me about your family. And I
Mm,
thought that was just such a curious difference in the world.
yeah. 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 One of the questions I love to answer is, what's your favorite place?
Yeah,
And
I love
I
that.
always say, my answer is with my family.
Amazing.
Doesn't matter
I
where
love
you
that.
are geographically, it's who you're with, right?
Yeah, it's who
Yeah.
you're with. I'm glad to be here with you, Garth. And we are entering
Me
we're
too.
entering a podcast about empathy, my friend.
Yeah.
We've got Annalisa Bond on this show, and I think listeners are going to love this episode. What do you think?
Yeah, she's an expert coach, and we ask her, what is empathy, and she says, I'm not an expert in empathy, but I'm
Hmm.
practicing
Love
empathy.
that.
And so we learn a
Yeah.
lot about her work with other leaders. We ask some questions around, what are some strategies that you use to help people get more empathetic, and then ultimately, what is changing in the world that requires leaders to have empathy. So yeah, great conversation. Went by way too quickly for me. What about you?
Same. I just can't wait for people to listen to this and reflect on how they see leadership in their place compared to what Annalise is saying around how leadership changing and how to practice empathy. And one more thing before we get in there, the push and pull of empathy and getting her done. How
Yeah.
do you balance those two? I think Annalise does a great job answering that one. So
Yeah,
I can't wait for people to listen to this.
she talks about the danger of being over empathetic too, which is
Hmm.
always a great perspective to
Hmm.
keep in mind. So Annalisa, both Jason and I have gotten to know her over the last couple of years in our work with Case, and she's a fantastic guest. Listeners, we hope you enjoy, and don't forget, as you listen, jot down any questions, send them to us at lassoingleadership.com, and enjoy the show.
Here we go.
With Garth and Jason, we dive right in, breaking down Ted's world. Let's begin from AFC Richmond's field to your day to day. Lassoing leadership's here to stay. Keep leading the lasso way. Together we'll grow stronger every day. So plug in your headphones and let's start the show. With lessons from Ted, we'll learn and grow.
Welcome to season 2 of Lassoing Leadership. I'm your host, Jason Rogers.
And I'm your other host, Garth Nichols. And this season of our podcast, we are deep diving into 10 main leadership themes. Now, these themes surfaced for us throughout season 1 of our podcast and the entire show of Ted Lasso. And so while you don't have to be with us through our season 1, it was pretty good and maybe worth listening or even re-listening to. So we're calling our approach to this season the Leadership Coach. And we have a game plan. And that game plan is basically a series of 3 podcasts.
That's right. And this week we're looking at empathy. You may have listened to our last podcast where we delved into our views of empathy and its role that plays in effective leadership, a leadership that we want to be a kinder, more compassionate style of leadership. We've highlighted a couple of resources in the last episode. We hope that you're looking at those. And we now have a special guest, an expert in empathy, to help us dive deeper into the theme today.
Yeah, and I'm so excited today. We are speaking
Me
with
too.
Annalisa Bond.
So excited.
I first met her this past summer, but before I tell that story, Jason, you've known her much longer, I think.
Yeah, well, a few years longer. Annalisa, you and I got connected for the first time when we were developing a Foundations of Leadership course for CASE, which is Canadians Accredited Independent Schools. And we got to put that whole course together with a fabulous group of friends, Keith and Paris, and made a way to figure that out. I went on to find out that Annalisa is more than a professional coach and a great friend, a counselor. She's also an incredibly talented photographer and world traveler and explorer, and she's curious about all sorts of things. So I'm looking forward to delving into those and empathy as we get into this. And as listeners, I encourage you to look her up. I think your artwork is available out there in the interweb somewhere, Annalisa. So I hope they check that out. Garth, how do you know Annalisa?
This past summer in Montreal, I took part in that case program, and Annalisa and I met in our first session, and we were actually in, coincidentally enough, the same empathy group. She was leading the empathy group.
Very nice.
And we got in there, and we were supposed to, classic, like pair off, learn about each other, and introduce each other. And I was actually paired with Annalisa.
What?
We just hit it off. We just hit it off so well. I loved that week with her and the whole team. So it's my pleasure to welcome Annalisa to the pod. And Annalisa, introduce yourself to our listeners.
Wow, you guys have done such a good job already of saying so much about me. Annalisa Bond, living on the west coast of Canada, out on Vancouver Island. Over 25 years in education, teaching, administration, district level work. And I've spent the last 15 years working with independent and public education facilities, working with leadership, with culture. I have a coaching business and leadership development business, and I'm just really thrilled the opportunities that I get to go into schools and into these different levels within school communities to help them emerge and evolve into what they're really, even more of what they're wanting to see happen to support students and the school's missions and visions and values, but most importantly, these young people being set up for their future. So thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure with both of you.
It's great to see you and to be chatting with you again. Before we jump right in, I just want to remind our listeners, if you have questions about empathy, before or even after this podcast, just get in touch with lassoingleadership@gmail.com or LinkedIn or however you connect with us. All right, Jason, let's start off.
Okay, Annalisa, we're going to get to empathy in a second, but before we get there, I know you speak with a lot of leaders in education and even outside of the field. Are there themes that you recognize as far as like the most challenging thing leaders are faced with in this day and age? Like what's coming up in your conversations with leaders generally?
Yeah. Wow. There definitely are themes. I think one of the biggest themes as someone moves into greater responsibility through their roles of leadership, whether that's department head or head of school, are these assumptions that we're to be a certain way. That now that I'm in this role, I've got this title, I'm being paid a little bit more, maybe a lot more, hopefully, that there are these beliefs that aren't necessarily helpful or conducive to creating a supportive environment and an empowering environment. So that's one of the themes that I see. Another theme that I'm seeing more of in the last 5 or 6 years is the speed that the world is changing and how schools respond to that. We're working with curriculums from the provincial governments, and how quickly are those really keeping up to speed with what our young people have their fingers in way before we even do a lot of the time. So that's a challenge and an opportunity that I'm hearing leaders speak about quite often. And then the third part, I think that is an age old, and it leads into some of the things I want to share with you guys today, is life is becoming more complex for our teachers and our staff and our educators. And while they're, doing all these amazing things with their students and setting up these environments, their own lives are becoming more complicated, and it's managing even more and navigating even more for them, but also then for the people leading the schools to have a different capacity for their staff and what might be occurring.
So I think, if I'm at the risk of oversimplifying, the answer to one, how should I be, is likely like get to know yourself and be yourself and own that. So that's like, and that's a lot of work. That's super simplified. But say, Annalise, for number two, when you said, the speed of change is so accelerated. We have to know so many things in our leadership, whether it's in education or outside. How do you counsel people, or like, how do you coach them, I guess, better way to put it, to reconcile that speed of change in their leadership? What would you say if I came to you with that kind of concern?
The number one, or the very first or most important thing that I would explore is, how much are you taking on yourself, and how are you accessing your team, your board, your community? Again, that is a tendency that we fall into, that in leadership, that we have to do it all on our own, when in reality, for me, leadership has a choice of really empowering the people around us so that they're motivated, they have great levels of ownership, and they have what they need to do the work. So, speed of change, how do we have the conversation with the people in the room that need to be in the room, so that it's not a solo responsibility or a sense of responsibility for yourself? That would be a place to start for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
that is.
The other
Go
part is
ahead.
power, like to not reinvent the wheel. And so tapping into our resources and our schools across the country, our schools in other countries. What are they seeing? How are they responding? And tapping into some of those already tried and tested, where some other places might be ahead of the game or a bit more flexible
Yeah.
naturally in their system and their organization. So those are two thoughts off the top of my head to that.
Nice.
Well, thanks. Those are real questions, I think, from a real leadership perspective.
Yeah.
And Garth and I talked last week about empathy and what it means to us, and I suspect the bulk of this conversation today is going to be around your third point, is like, how do we empathize with the people we're leading, or how do we demonstrate empathy in our leadership? I'm really curious, to you, Annalise, if I was to put it to you, like, what is empathy exactly, and how does it play out in leadership? What would you say to that?
Yeah. I mean, I looked it up in the dictionary before this call just to like really see what it says, because there's a lot of different relationships that people have with this word. And I just want to full disclosure, I am not an expert in empathy by any means. I'm practicing empathy, and it's something that I'm choosing to do. While I've been a naturally empathetic person throughout my life, I've also been a get or done person. And I think back to my days in being an administrator in the schools, and I had room to have more empathy. So what I mean by that is, empathy, and that when I looked it up in the dictionary, I've got it right here, sensing others' emotions. And also having the ability to imagine what others might be thinking or feeling. And there's a danger to that, of having assumptions of what might be going on for other people. And so where I'm finding myself in relationship to this word empathy these days is to become really curious and seek the understanding of what might be at play. I can't imagine a greater gift of someone taking the time to, if they're sensing something's going on, to ask questions that help open up and unpack whatever it is that's at play for me. So, it's almost like being curious enough, taking a pause, and asking the questions, which has really come through my coaching practice over the last 15 years. To be curious enough to ask the questions that are really getting at what's going on for that individual. Then we've lit up the field in a completely different way. One, for them to maybe have an ownership that they can walk away, oh gosh, I totally know what I need to do with this now. Or there's a trust and a weave of ownership and understanding that we can collaborate and work on together. So, I was thinking about this, and just that with my relationship with this, it has always served me to, okay, I wonder what's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
I can be empathic with someone's feelings, but that's not necessarily helpful. We don't want empaths walking all around our schools and nothing getting done.
Yeah. So let me jump in there, Annalisa, because when you listed those themes, you talked about speed of change, and you have to explore how much a leader is taking on themselves. Can you tell me more about having empathy for your own self? Like as a leader, I've heard the saying, it's like putting on your own oxygen mask first, like in a plane or something along those lines. For you, what does that mean to have empathy for your own self?
In the context of things moving quickly, or just in general?
I think just in general, because you've outlined that the world of education is changing, the world of business is changing too. And it was when you said we don't want a bunch of empaths walking around. How do you have empathy for your own self in order to be a leader that balances empathy with others, but also like, I got to get stuff done?
Yeah. There's two parts in there that you've talked about. I'll go with the first part first.
Yeah.
As I've developed my own relationship to have empathy / compassion, maybe, for myself, that has allowed and created even more capacity to have that for other people.
Right.
In an embodied way, in a lived way, not just an intellectual way. I would say that my years in schools, I had empathy from more of an intellectual place. Whereas some natural too, but as I've explored this, done my own work, and what I mean by my own work is looking at my own tendencies, my own patterns. Some people use shadows, some people use nervous system work terms. As I've really dove into becoming more aware of my own work, I've had to develop empathy for myself because I'm a human being. And when I think about this show, Ted never ever forgot about the human. Like there's such humanity in his leadership. He didn't know a thing about soccer, football, whichever word you want to use, but he knew people. Like he always saw people. And so as I've developed more of that experience of understanding how to be empathic and compassionate with myself, I am able to create even more of a basin to hold that and curate that with and for other people. And leaders who are like with this pace and change that you were both talking about a minute ago, if I can be transparent about that and model that empathy and compassion I'm having for myself with this reality, that just breeds so much more confidence and coherence in me and my team coming together around this. It's not a weakness.
Right. I love that. I think, Annalisa, like that is all so true. And we see like Ted with like, Biscuits with the Boss, first concert, blah, 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 like all of these pieces where he's connecting on the human front and getting to know people. And I think leaders are tactical as well as emotional, right? And I think you mentioned it earlier where it's like, hey, I'm get her done and I'm an empath. I'm both of those things. I can appreciate that some leaders maybe listening to this podcast might be saying, okay, that's all great. I get it. I know that I need to, be vulnerable and I need to be empathetic towards people, but how do I do it? Like, are there a couple tactics you might offer for leaders? Like they're going back into a staff meeting, they're going back into the hallway, they're going back into the workplace. How do you tell them to, get started maybe in a new practice that is maybe a little bit more empathetic?
Baby steps.
Yeah.
You know, if this isn't a natural part, because we always want to be authentic too,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think I just come back to what do I need to understand here? What questions might help create understanding and more awareness for this other person? And all of that's through curiosity, inquiry, and asking questions. And that automatically creates empathy because people feel seen, people
Mm-hmm.
are heard. I can show up empathetically for a staff member that's having a really difficult time and have my questions really help bring awareness to the situation they're in. And then we can shift into that practical application of next steps. So, you know, what's coming to light for you, or what's, you know, having just felt all of this or seen or heard yourself say all of this, what are some of the possibilities then of how you move forward and how we move forward? So I think my maturity with this practice has become a partnership between empathy and still the getting her done. But they're more of they both value each other, and it's not an either or. There's a really lovely, and I think people would say that about me. Like, she's really
Mm-hmm.
caring and she's clear and firm,
Mm-hmm.
and accountable. I mean, accountable is on my website. Gracious and accountable. It's like there's a healthy tension in that is healthy. Like,
Yes.
if we relax too much, our nervous system doesn't have the amount of tension in it that needs to stay healthy and active and occupied in the way that we need it. And it's that kind, I don't know if that's a great analogy, but it's that kind of practice that I would invite people to explore, regardless of their role. It's just a great human practice. But if we are leaders in these educational institutions across our country, how do we create the how do we create the marriage? What are the things we specifically need to practice that aren't necessarily as comfortable for us? Because often these things are in our wheelhouse. We just haven't had either the modeling or the coaching or the confidence to bring them online because they have a stigma. But we can be tough and caring. We can be super purposeful and logical and empathetic and flexible. We don't
I
have
love that.
a world of either or.
Yeah, you're explaining that so well. And if I'm hearing you correctly, there's that tension. I'm hearing like leaders need to they need to be able to know when they have to slow down and take the time to really make that, like, to bring in their own humanity. And that also empathy is something that you've talked about it. It takes time to develop that skill, and you're constantly evolving your leadership as you become more empathetic. And it is a practice. It's not like you checkbox, sweet, done, I'm now empathetic. And you've also mentioned coaching and your own practice. So as we begin to wrap up, can you tell our listeners where they might find you and your work, your artwork, your photography, your coaching practice?
Sure. So my coaching practice is Leap Professional Coaching and Wellness. And you'll find that on the web, www.leapcoaching.ca, leapprofessionalcoaching.ca. And my art, which just feels, I'm so humbled that you mentioned that, Jason, because it's a passion and a side thing, but it's really a coaching conversation with myself.
That's beautiful.
My shows have been that, and the exploration of the landscapes I traveled for those pieces. It's created such an enhancement to my life and to the way I see the world and the way I can talk about things, and a vulnerability, definitely a vulnerability. So I think that one is, I should know this, AnnalisaBondPhotography.com. I think it's there.
We'll find it. We'll find it. We'll put it on the site for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Annalisa, I'm insatiably curious, and so I'm gonna slip one more quick question in. This is kind of a rapid fire question for you. You're meeting somebody for the first time, and you want to get to know them better. You're a coach, so I'm pretty sure you've got a few questions in your back pocket. What's the most powerful question you ask somebody to get to know them rapidly when you've just come to know them?
You know, it depends on context, but one of the questions I love to ask is, what matters most to you about that? Like, what's your, you know, if it was, you know, you're an educator, I don't know, you know, what's still in there of why you're connected into this field and choice of work, or, you know, connecting to that emotional, and they might have forgotten, but that question seems to reconnect people, remind people, or unleash or unlock something they might have forgotten. So yeah, that like, what's important, what matters, what's significant about, what value, how does this still impact you? That's probably the one I would leave you with.
I love that, Annalisa. It's a perfect segue, because before we go, we want to remind our listeners that we are taking questions too about these episodes, and we want them to engage with us. So provide your ideas, your insights, your curiosities about empathy or anything else we're talking about, so we can support you along your leadership journey through these important conversations.
Yeah, and that's a wrap. This went by very, very quickly.
So
Annalisa,
fast.
thank you so much for being with us. We'll put all your contacts in the show notes. And to our listeners, thanks for listening. Be sure to like, tell your friends, subscribe, all those great things. And Annalisa, would you do us the honor of closing off the podcast and taking us home?
Until next time, keep leading the lasso way.
Thanks, Annalisa. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
Annalisa. Thanks for listening.
Step up to the mic. It's time to play Lassoing Leadership every day. From the pitch to the boardroom, lessons call to mind. Keep leading the lasso way. You'll find we've got heart, we've got soul, and humor too. Exploring how TED shows what leaders should do. With Garth and Jason, we dive right in, breaking down TED's world. Let's begin from AFC Richmond's field to your day-to-day. Lassoing leadership's here to stay. Keep leading the lasso way. Together we'll grow stronger every day. So plug in your headphones and let's start the show. With lessons from TED we'll learn